Show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
Here we are.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 65 of Down South Anomalies. Of course, my name's Jay Katz.
And I'm Aspasia.
And it is so great to have you all with us here. We have a returning guest tonight, someone which we absolutely applaud big time. Very credentialed man, and he is MUFON's National Investigator for Australia and New Zealand.
Yep.
He's a former neuroscientist, and he is just an extraordinary researcher.
Absolutely.
And he's a very humble, gracious man to be around, and he always inspires me. And tonight's subject is quite astounding. I'm so fascinated to hear more about this.
Yes, we are.
It is Havana Syndrome, enemy or anomaly. And what a conundrum.
Yeah,
you know,
it is a conundrum.
Is this a pulse microwave weapon, or is this
It's
something
else.
that is so esoteric? But the thing is, it's actually looking quite dangerous.
Yeah.
It's causing neurological damage.
It
so,
is.
Roger, thank you for joining us on episode 65.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's a great title that you made up. I like that. It's a very catchy title.
We love our titles.
That's our pleasure.
It's our
Look,
forte.
I have to say, we are broadcasting on solemn land,
Yes,
the
we are.
Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we want to respect the elders past, present, and emerging. It's an extraordinary year, 2024, that we're falling into. And I just got to, excuse me, Roger, we're just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. And part of the Untold Radio Network, we're a huge streaming service of podcasts led by the one and only Doug Hijack.
That's correct.
And his beautiful son, Alex, who gave us Monster Quest on the History Channel and literally hundreds of other great documentaries, books, programs, an extraordinary man. But today, Jim Myers, who is an incredible individual with his wife.
Well, today, a couple of
and
days
his
ago, because
cast.
we're broadcasting.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we are. We're broadcasting from the future when it comes to the US. Had an accident there. He'd already had knee surgery. And I believe a horse kicked him today. And his cast didn't go to air. So I want to say initially, our thoughts go out to his
Jim and his
family,
family, absolutely.
the people working at the Sasquatch outpost, and just everyone who's just been astounding. Stephanie, who mediates his site, an astounding site, and quick and fast recovery. And another couple of things I want to clear up is some flummoxes. Do you remember that beautiful word, flummox?
Yes, I
And
do.
we've had the grandkids here. We've had flooding. We've had extreme temperatures.
Is that what we're
And
putting
last
it
week,
down to?
I'm trying to. Well,
Not
I'm
putting
gonna,
it down
I'm going
to.
to clear up our flummox on the Apollo missions last
No,
week.
that was your flummox.
Okay, thank you
Well,
for blaming me right up.
Yeah.
Apollo
yeah.
11 was the first landing on the
Of
moon, of
course.
course. Apollo 13 was aborted.
Yeah.
Apollo 17 was the last mission, which means 6 of those missions got to
To the
actually
moon.
walk on the moon.
Got
And
to the moon.
And Apollo 18
Mm.
was just a film.
Okay.
Not a bad film, but
No,
not a
but just
brilliant
a
one. It
film.
was just a
Yeah.
film.
Yeah.
So that was episode 64 we had to clear up.
Mm.
We had a little bit of dyslexia on episode 60. I'm trying to clear the shelves here.
You're
And
trying to start.
we got Herbert
The
Hess
new
muddled
year.
up with
Oh, we already spoke about that.
a nasty
yeah.
Hess.
Yeah.
One of them wrote Steppenwolf. The other
Yeah.
one did some terrible
Some
things.
terrible things.
And then we got C.S. Lewis and Lewis Carroll muddled up.
Yeah,
One
well, you can
one of them
understand
had
why.
people coming out of a cupboard. The other had them coming into a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Whatever.
And then there was some episode somewhere where I said that David Yollop had written the wrong title book. And I think I said that Harry Seidler was the one behind deep sleep therapy when it was Harry
No.
Bailey. Did I say that?
I don't. Oh,
The
I
poor
can't-
old
I
architect
can't
had
even
really
remember
copped it.
now.
Anyway, that's all cleared up. That's
Yeah.
done. The most important thing is never believe Aspasia or
Anything
myself.
that I say.
We don't hold a hypothesis close to us.
No,
We are extremely open-minded. We have interviewed hundreds of people over the years,
Yeah.
and we know that there is a world of strange anomalies out there.
100%.
Now, today, one of our intrepid reporters in the field, Matthew Black, sent me a great still. Can you go to the stills, Aspasia?
Yes, I can.
Now, this was shot evidently this morning in Sydney. This is
So
the
that would
18th
be,
of January.
yeah, 18th of January.
And this was over Bankstown Airport.
Airport.
Have a look at that, Roger. What do you think of this interesting image?
Took
And,
this
you know,
pic on
it's
my
way
phone.
too circular to be a lenticular cloud. They
Yes,
get
but
circular, not that.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a lenticular cloud to me because they've got a different shape
it's
and
too-
the edges are really defined. So it looks interesting. But as an investigator, we'd have to ask certain questions and sorry, keep going.
No, you're right, and that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And you know,
That seems
go on.
Seems to have a little hole in the center, which is interesting. And
that is interesting and very consistent with lots of UFO reports. Daylight sightings early in the piece, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, they're always obsessing over that centerpiece that seemed to be ubiquitous in a lot of the sightings and photographs.
So maybe we could send the info of this person to Roger, and he could maybe interview
we need to actually track down Michael Fernley.
Yeah.
So thank you, Michael, and thank you, Matthew Black, for bringing us to our attention. It just shows you that, like, TikTok and Instagram have their places.
They do.
We got sent this amazing shot a couple of years ago around Christmas time from an aircraft technician early in the morning at Tullamarine Airport. Now, you can't really see that object clearly.
You didn't get the close-up of it,
we need to
you?
expand that. People can take a screenshot and look at that. But, you know, here's the interesting thing, isn't it, Roger? You know, this is not a national security risk.
Clearly not.
But if they're there hovering around Bankstown, Tullamarine, it clearly is a national security risk. It's a civil aviation risk.
Well, it is if these
things
it's in
the airspace.
The trading airspace.
Anyway, look, I think exciting things are on the boil for this year, especially for yourself and maybe us coming together creatively, but we're not going to say any more because I don't want to curse things.
So quickly say that Roger is going to be in the States to do this.
Well, maybe discuss that with us. And you're also appearing next March at UFO Research here in Sydney. So maybe tell us about what you're doing in the States, in Dallas, isn't it?
In Dallas, he's going to Dallas.
Yeah. So 2nd of March, I'll be doing this talk, the same talk in Dallas that I'm doing on Havana Syndrome. But it's a work in progress at the moment, and there's an awful lot of information, and so I'll be trying to present a initial presentation on this material with UFO Research New South Wales in 2nd of March, and then on July the I think it's the 11th, I'll be going to Dallas, Texas. It's actually Irvine, which is close to Dallas, Texas. Where it'll be the international MUFON conference for the year, and so I'll be presenting this material, and hopefully it's going to be finished by then, because there's an awful lot of stuff data that I still haven't got, and that's the problem with this topic, is that it's still very, very, a lot of it's classified, and it's difficult to get data. And as a scientist, I've never come across a situation where, if I'm, reading journal articles, it's all available, all the information is available. But here I'm having to read journal articles and, and sort of like try and join the dots where the redactions are, and there's multiple redactions everywhere that I read. It's just really hard.
That is fascinating. Let's just digress slightly back for our listeners and observers. And this is going to be a heavily visual program. So if you're not on YouTube and you're listening to an audio source, get a chance to go and look at this program maybe a little later on. I've just noticed how much I'm sweating. I feel like this continent is actually shifted to the equator. Like thunderstorms one minute, heat waves the next.
Sydney is now a tropical. We are in a tropical zone.
So
of
maybe
weather.
just for our listeners, and you've been on two of our programs graciously before, Roger, tell us a little bit about your background as a neuroscientist. You're a lecturer now, and how you became the national MUFON director for Australia and New Zealand.
Well, I'll start with the education background. So I did a Bachelor of Science degree at Sydney Uni when I was I entered when I was 18, and then worked as a laboratory technician, pathology laboratory technician in various hospitals, and then I specialized in neuroscience. So I actually went back to Sydney Uni as a scientist, and they gave me a position in the laboratory as the laboratory manager. So this was the neuropathology lab at the University of Sydney. And I was there for 15 years, where I did a PhD in motor neuron disease and managed the laboratory. And after that, I decided that lab work was, I was just getting a bit bored of the laboratory work. There was a lot of research going on as well, which was interesting, but I decided to just take a segue and go and do teaching, which was my passion for quite some time. But the jobs were really hard to find, so I eventually went for an interview and got a job as a lecturer in statistics and anatomy, physiology, microscopy, and various other units and molecular biology. So we're doing that now, and the MUFON side of things, I've been very interested in ufology for quite some time, but I only got actively involved in 2014, I think it was, where instead of just reading books and communicating with researchers, I decided to do field work. So basically, I joined MUFON in 2014, became a field investigator, and then when the national director left, she suggested that I take over, and that was suggested to MUFON in the States, and they gave me the job. And basically, I'm trying to build that side of things. Now we've got something like 15 field investigators, and we're getting field investigators left, right, and centre now, because basically I've got several people that have applied to become a field investigator in the last couple of weeks. So that's sort of like coming on really well.
Great.
Wow, I'm glad to hear that. Do you think that's all that coverage with Grush and those stories have just raised the profile?
As you said, 2023 was a really big year, and it's piqued a lot of interest in a lot of people who have had some interest, in this subject, but didn't go public with it. They were just interested in the subject and kept it to themselves, but now they want to actually be involved. And I think 24 will be even a bigger year.
Great.
Absolutely. I think too, finally having people with a bit of an extensive background, a bit of training given to them in field research is incredibly important, because at the end of the day, the majority of these stories go untold, unspoken about.
Yeah.
And I think they're far more ubiquitous than we're aware of. And I mean, that photograph speaks to that
absolutely
so strongly.
For sure.
So we're so lucky to have you in this country and to have you there also checking out cases in New Zealand. But Havana Syndrome is an odd occurrence for a ufological researcher like yourself, who has spent a lot of time in the field, and as a neuroscientist, to all of a sudden find yourself involved in doing some studies of, and you have become part of this incredibly interesting organization called the Jason organization. Maybe tell us about that. The Jason group.
Oh, okay. So I'm with the UAP Medical Coalition, and so that's a separate to Jason. Jason is actually a group of scientists, really elite, the most elite scientists that they can gather. That's actually based in the United States, and they get put together by the government whenever there's not intractable, is that the right word? Unsolvable problem, and they were put together to look at Havana Syndrome, because no one could really work out what was going on. And they put two documents together. They did a study in 2018 and another study in 2021, I believe. So what they did is they tried to find out who was actually doing it, basically, and how they were doing it, who or what were doing it. And there's been various theories, and obviously they had all these specialized scientists, psychologists, engineers, physicists, and to work on this. I don't know how many people they had, but as I said, they were the most elite scientists, and they came up with this idea, which I twigged on and tried to do my own spin on a hypothesis that I came across. And some people said that I should be hospitalized for it, but it's something that I've come up on based on some data, and I don't think I'm mad. But
maybe we'll just hold on that hypothesis till we explain to listeners. I'm sure most people are aware what Havana Syndrome is, but I've been always fascinated with it, and it has been ubiquitous in the press. I remember reading articles like every year or every second year, the Guardian or the Herald would have a front page story on the embassy in Cuba or other embassies throughout the world where people were getting sick, and assumed that maybe there was a pulsed form of microwave weapon or sound device like an LRAD, a long-range audio device, being pushed onto these embassies. So maybe explain a bit of that.
So how long has this problem been going on for? Have we got like a start date?
Yes, we've got a start date, and that's November, I think, 2016. So late 2016 is when it started, and so there was patient zero, which we call this guy patient zero. He was a government official who was involved in, I believe, the intelligence community. We don't know his name. He comes under certain pseudonyms like Tony and Adam, and he was hit in his home in Cuba. So what initially happened is that when Obama had actually opened the gates to Cuba, like, I mean, there's been most of you listeners will know that, you know, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis in '61, and there was a lot of political problems between America and Cuba because of you know, Russia's intervention with Cuba and them wanting to maintain that as a stronghold for the communist regime across the world. And basically there was very little politically and going on between America and Cuba for such a long time, and also you know, like there was no economic exchange.
There was sanctions,
and there were no sanctions and whatever
people
until Obama
couldn't get a passport there.
Yep.
Couldn't buy Havana cigars.
No,
big one.
And so basically, Obama was saying, well, I don't know why this is still in place, so I'm going to you know, reopen political ties with Cuba, and we're going to, you know, open the U.S. embassy again in Cuba and send our ambassadors there and our intelligence community, and also we will send civilians there if they want to live in Cuba. And Cuba found it, you know, great, because their economy was boosted by this so tremendously. And so following that, maybe you could show that that video with Obama making a statement about opening ties again with Cuba.
Right, Roger. Interesting. All right, there we are. Obama 2014. Yeah, let's look at that.
Okay.
Today, the United States of America is changing its relationship with the people of Cuba. In the most significant changes in our policy in more than 50 years, We will end an outdated approach that for decades has failed to advance our interests, and instead, we will begin to normalize relations between our two countries. Through these changes, we intend to create more opportunities for the American and Cuban people and begin a new chapter among the nations of the Americas.
Just a few hours ago, this communist nation welcomed President Obama, who became the first American president to visit here in 88 years.
We felt like we were part of history in the making. It was impossible not to feel that way.
Starting in 2016, U.S. diplomats and spies who were serving in Cuba started experiencing these strange sounds and physical sensations, mostly in their homes in the Cuban capital, and then started coming down with these bizarre, unexplained symptoms.
We heard the strange cicada sound at our house, I would say 2, 3, 4 nights a week for 30 to 60 minutes over the course of several months.
I think when we went out on the porch and made that recording that night, you got hurt. It was persistent, very, very loud. I was always sitting in our bedroom in front of those French doors with just glass between me and the sound. You know, I didn't have a sense that it was dangerous.
Okay.
Wow, yeah. Roger, that's fascinating to me because I don't think I read extensively in the newspaper reports that they're actually hearing an audio sound.
Yep. So let's just go back to when Obama had opened the doors to Cuba. He went out of office in 2016, I believe, and Trump came in. So some were saying that because we've got, CIA agents in Cuba and diplomats there, Russia was targeting the Americans because it was going to hit them where it hurts. And basically the sound was created by some sort of ultrasound weapon or microwave weapon from Russia. But there's a few problems with that. So they were hearing sounds and they weren't quite sure where they were coming from. The sounds were in their heads while they were in the house. So the sound would have been going through, if they didn't have the window open, glass or brick walls or whatever, and affecting these individuals when they were actually located in their houses. And so the initial concept was that Russia was attacking the United States, and Trump then pulled out the intelligence community and the diplomats, and the civilians followed. So that was the initial idea, because they didn't know who was it. Well, first of all, they blamed the Cubans, but through Russia. So the Russians through Cubans, sorry. And basically, that was the initial hypothesis that because, Cuba was initially a communist, well, it is still a communist country, but if I'm not wrong, basically that they wanted to remove, Trump wanted to remove these people because he felt that they were being targeted by Russians.
Right.
So, yeah, so basically that sound that they heard was actually very similar to what's called the Indies short-tail cricket. So they thought it might actually be a cricket that's actually causing this sound. It's a mating call from a male, I think, which is called a Neurogryllus celerinictus. That's the actual species, genus and species of this cricket. And it has a fairly loud sound. And basically they were hearing something very similar to this cricket sound. And so the next hypothesis was that it's probably not the Russians, that it could be this cricket that is causing a problem. But and it's the problem was that some people were affected, where other people weren't, and the hypothesis didn't really stand stand on its own because of the fact that some people were being affected. Why weren't the Cubans being affected? And they were saying that they were like Pavlov's dog. They were conditioned to it, whereas the diplomats and the intelligence community weren't. And because it's such a stressful job, that they, on top of the stress that they were undergoing, when they hear this cricket sound, that's what could have caused problems with them. And the problems, So
something with the magic bullet.
Yeah, it is.
That's astounding.
Yeah. So what they did. Go ahead.
Go on. No. Go on, please.
Oh, so what they did. So patient 0 was the first guy who was affected, and then he spoke to somebody, and he was hospitalized. He was taken out to a hospital and examined, and basically they found out that he had heard this sound and basically suffered what might be called an immaculate concussion, which means that you can develop brain damage from this sonic attack, if it is a sonic attack, in an immaculate way. In other words, nothing touches you, but the sound actually goes through your brain and actually causes brain damage. And it can be seen on MRI as white matter damage. So you lose myelin on the axons, and so there's a loss of.
So myelin is the sheath that covers the axons. So it's nerve damage.
It's nerve damage, yeah. So basically, the nerves within the actual brain matter, not the peripheral nerves, were damaged in these people, and it caused them certain signs and symptoms, which were headache, nausea, vertigo, hearing loss, sight, affected their sight. There we go. Difficulty, so brain fog, and unsteady gait, vertigo, dizziness, nausea, headaches, neuropsychiatric problems, and tinnitus, shell shock. So basically, what I did, I tried to compare these symptoms and signs with what people undergo when they have a close encounter with the UAP neurologically.
Oh,
and they're very similar.
Mm-hmm.
They're very similar. If you look at them, they're very similar. So there might be some differences, but I thought that was interesting to start off with. And so maybe we should, to give the audience a good idea about the signs and symptoms, maybe we should have a look at that video where there's several different people that have actually trying to explain what they're going through when they hear this. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Roger. Let's go there now. This is fascinating.
I'm going to add that. Hang on. Okay, no, I need to take it back. Hang on.
No, you need to give it sound back?
Yeah. Hang on a sec. Hang on. Let me take it back to the beginning. Okay.
And put its speaker on.
Yeah. Sounds good. And here we go. Okay. Can you hear it?
No, no sound.
Oh, here we go.
No sound.
Hang on.
In a Moscow hotel.
Let me take it back to the beginning.
All right.
I woke up in the middle of the night with an incredible case of vertigo. The room was spinning. I wanted to throw up.
Mark Polymeropoulos, a former U.S. intelligence officer at the CIA, was hit in 2017 by an invisible attack in a Moscow hotel.
I'd been in places like, Iraq and Afghanistan. I'd been shot at, but this was by far the most terrifying experience of my life.
Polymeropoulos created a Superman mask in art therapy, thrusting a dagger through Superman's skull to represent the headaches which have changed him. The CIA agency seal cracked.
The night of my event, March 17th, 2017, I was standing at the kitchen window. I was washing dishes. And in the midst of washing the dish, all of a sudden, I felt like I was being struck with something. And it was an overwhelming sense of anxiety, pressure, completely inexplicable, and then pain. What one of the security officers had said to someone else just a couple of days before. Look, we don't know what's happening, but if you think something's happening, get off the X. And I heard that in my head, get off the X. And it was almost like I had been unplugged and a spell was lifted and I moved. And that was it. I kind of just walked down the hall in a daze.
I started with the vertigo and the tinnitus and that brain fog. I could actually feel my brain shutting down, like it just, everything kind of went black. I'm standing and it's feeling as if I'm being pushed, like you're being smashed from the top of the head into the ground. That particular symptom, it was many months after I had come back to the States before I started feeling that one.
The neurologist said to me, he says, Kate, what you've got here is, it's as if you aged 20-something years, and you have those changes all at once.
Something had happened to me, and the more I ignored it, the worse I got. It had gotten to a point where I quite literally wasn't functioning as a person. I couldn't remember anything. My head was in so much pain. My ears were ringing. We all had different sensations. We all heard different sounds, or in my case, didn't hear anything at all. Why? Why are they so different?
One theory that we bounce around sometimes is maybe they're experimenting with dosing, right? So they hit some of our people with a really strong blast. In our case, it felt like whatever they were doing, it was farther away, like a lower intensity thing.
Are we guinea pigs? Are we test mice? A little bit, felt like it.
People started to raise the possibility that this was psychosomatic, that it was mass psychogenic illness.
Several of us went to the security office. We listened to the sound that they had recording, and I'm like, wow, that's the sound I heard. They were pretty much, no, you're wrong. You're not, you didn't hear that. So that was the start of trying to figure out how to get people to believe me.
I don't think anybody wants to be a victim, but there's nothing in the world that's worse than being a victim that everybody doubts.
I actually got a call from someone at the State Department and said, is this Dr. Hoffer? And I said, yes. And he said, Dr. Hoffer, this is the State Department. We have a problem.
Dr. Hoffer was able to do a lot of testing, especially on the delicate inner ear organs that govern balance.
If you take the whole group, that they uniformly had dramatic damage to the otolithic organs, which are the gravity organs. So not just a little bit abnormal, all of them were abnormal.
Press the middle button when finished.
As more and more cases emerged, the government realized they were going to need one facility that was able to really evaluate any new case that came forward. And that's where the University of Pennsylvania came in. The doctors were able to determine that the Havana Syndrome individuals had brain injuries that were very similar to a concussion. They found that the Havana Syndrome brains had less white matter and less connectivity in them. And that led to what doctors started to refer to as a brain network disorder.
I still didn't completely believe it. And I would ask Dr. Swanson constantly, are you absolutely sure this can't be psychosomatic? And he would say over and over, yes, we're sure. There are certainly some components that could be argued away, but there are others that can't be. And it's those that make us know that this is real and not psychosomatic.
I think I was at my peak when I first got to Cuba, and then it went downhill from there. I see myself, and there isn't any physical problem that I can see, and I'm still seeing me, but it's not me. And so it's depressing and it's overwhelming, and I'm still trying to deal with it.
Okay.
I spent about 9 months trying to do my old job, little pieces of it, a few hours a day. And I felt sick all the time. I had horrible headaches all the time. I had to grieve it because it's a loss. I am not the woman I was before when I went to Cuba. I'm not that person anymore. I had to go back to the department and say, I think I'm broken permanently.
When Dr. Galloway told me that I couldn't make my eyes work together, it was the first time that someone had said, you know, that this is sort of the smoking gun. This is your proof that you have suffered some sort of traumatic brain injury without actually being hit in the head. I finally realized that it was over. There is no more career. It's just try to keep working, try to keep contributing in some way. I work 2 hours a day, if I'm lucky. I don't manage, I don't lead. Everything that's happening for me is happening below the surface. It's 4.5 years of excruciating headaches. It's 4.5 years of stumbling, losing my balance. It's 4.5 years of vision degradation.
People don't understand what this kind of brain damage can do to you.
Symptoms are not what we have. We have injuries. So it is all in our heads in the sense it's a brain injury. It's inside my skull, but it's not imagined.
I do not believe the department took me seriously. It was always, we'll get back to you. If we ask for more information, we'll get back to you. I have to ask myself, are they trying to disprove us or are they trying to prove what happened?
That is fascinating and so disturbing. Okay, just pop it out.
Yeah, I'll just put all those videos together. So it's a collage of several different videos that I found. But what the take-home message here is that these people are intelligent, hardworking people within the intelligence community and diplomats as well. And they're being, as you can see, they're not lying. They're not trying to make something up. They're very genuine and very emotional about what happened to them. And also, you can see that it's very debilitating, and to the extent that it takes them to a different level cognitively, where it's permanent, and so they can't even actually continue on working in their job, and that's what they really, they love their job, and so it's something real. It's not psychogenic. It's something that's there have been a lot some psychiatrists, particularly one in New Zealand, who's written a book with one of his friends who are saying that it's psychogenic, but there's a lot of evidence pointing against the hypothesis that it's psychogenic, which I can go through.
These people have got physical. They've got physical.
Exactly. People wondering about that sound.
Yeah,
that's screaming guy.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, it's him. Yeah. It's him.
How can a psychogenic disorder give you brain damage similar to a concussive injury, impact injury? The thing I found fascinating in there were 2 points. First one is that notion of them inquiring about this felt like we were being dosed. We were being tested on, and they were dosing us. Now, last week, we did a preliminary potted investigation into the history of sonic warfare, which goes way back, the walls of Jericho. And we found during that there was some interesting inroads made in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s to do with industry in the US, where they would literally set up speakers over the production line, and they use the term dosing. They're actually doing studies to see what music made people more malleable to actually working more effectively on those production lines. And not that I'm saying this has anything to do with the sound weapon, but it would certainly push you towards that initial hypothesis.
Yep, I agree. But this is different. This is okay. So the funny thing about this is that they're attacked within their homes, outside. And it seems to be directional, like it actually picks the person out. So this sound will pick one person out, and it can pick several people around that person, but not affect anyone else. Some people hear the sound, and someone right next to them cannot hear the sound. So it's really weird, and it's so hard to work out what is actually going on here.
Have they made? Excuse me to interrupt, but have they made any correlations to that whole vast community out there now that calls themselves targeted individuals that seem to hear things singularly. I'm worried about that film from a mental health perspective because it shows signs of schizophrenia or schizophrenia, but it doesn't appear to be that way. And they state some incredible similarities to what we're hearing in this Havana Syndrome. Do you know about them, the targeted individuals?
I haven't heard of targeted individuals, but I know that there's a thing called the Frey effect, and it was Alan Frey, who was a scientist in the 60s, who could hear radar, and there's certain people that can actually hear radar, and some people can't. Now, I don't know whether that's similar or I don't know.
No, this is a whole new world down the rabbit hole of parapolitical research where people feel like they're being targeted by these pulsed microwave intercerebral attacks. But they do seem to have some consistency. I don't want you, Roger, as a specialist, to fall down that rabbit hole at all because it's massive as well. But I was just curious if you knew, because they sound like they have extraordinary similarities.
Yeah, but so the Havana Syndrome only affects United States and Canadian intelligence community and diplomats only.
Yeah.
Very, very specific.
That's
very specific.
Except for one doctor that actually came from the United States to investigate patient 0, and he got it. So he's the only person that I know of that's not part of the intelligence community, or maybe he was part of the intelligence community because he had to be read into. Yeah,
that's right.
You know, but it's only US and later Canadians that were affected, and they, if they travelled around the world, there were 2 individuals from the US Embassy here in Australia that got hit in Australia. There's so it's always going to be someone that's American that's residing in the embassy in Russia or Vienna or some other place around that map that I gave you about the.
So it has occurred.
This map, is it?
It has occurred on Australian soil.
Yes, it has.
Wow! So let's get those maps
Which
up, maybe.
map is it?
Now you don't get a confused.
Cyclone.
No,
not
that's
the cyclone one. So
I think.
I think I might have given you a map
Distribution
where
of Grylus.
Go down.
No,
that's fine. No, go down.
Okay, let me go
it's
down.
number 22.
Here it is.
Okay, incident of HS.
Yeah.
Havana Syndrome.
Yep.
That one.
Yeah, that's the one. Yep. So as you can see, the latest is 2021, and there haven't been any other maps that I could find or anything on distribution of Havana Syndrome around the world. But if you go down to Havana, Cuba, you can see it happened in November 2016 there. So that would have been patient 0, the earliest. And then 2017, 2018, 2019, 2021, 2020 near the White House. And that was the first one on US soil where someone was actually hit on US soil.
Right.
They stopped. As I said before, all this stuff's now really highly classified, and I can't get my hands on any recent data as to, like we know there's thousands now of people that are involved, and it's like I don't know of any psychogenic illness that's global and that only affects one particular group of people that like are involved in a particular occupation, like intelligence or diplomacy or anything like that.
That's very bizarre.
And also, patient 0, that the information about patient 0 was actually classified, and so no one within the intelligence community that was from the United States knew about that case, and yet others cropped up because independently. So that, for me, rules out psychogenic illness straight away, because they didn't know about this guy. So psychogenic or mass hysteria actually works on communication. So if somebody tells you that, I went to work and I got bitten by this bug And basically this June bug problem that happened in I think it was in the 50s or 60s. Everyone was saying, people were starting to go to work and saying, oh yeah, I got bitten by that bug as well. And there was mass hysteria. So it relies on communication, but here there was no communication of patient 0 to the intelligence community, and yet it happened to other individuals independently.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see how they reacted when they, when they were saying, "Oh, my doctor, people think it's psychogenic, and it's actually real to me, and I can feel it. It's taken me to a different level. I'm not the same person."
It's debilitating for them.
So where does the medical UAP task force and your involvement there all of a sudden find themselves looking into Havana Syndrome? Is that what has occurred in terms of that being involved with that professional group?
Well, I was given the task to, when I first joined last year, excuse me, I was given an ODNI study that was done, and I was asked to read through it, and again heavily redacted, and they wanted me to look at Havana Syndrome and come up with some sort of hypothesis as to what was going on, because I specialised in neuroscience, and also I'm interested in UAPs, and they're obviously they're based on their interest in UAPs, and the whole coalition was formed as a coalition to look at the different injuries that happen to people that have close encounters with UAPs, and just like Gary Nolan had done when he was examining the MRIs when the CIA knocked on his door and said, what do you think's happening here with these patients that have been exposed to close encounters with UAPs? And so he did a study there. He's not looking at it anymore, and I've written to him several times, and he's never written back. But
that's interesting in itself. That's interesting in itself. What do you assume that is? Do you think he's under that deep cover again?
It could be
into the classification.
Yeah. I heard him on a podcast where he says, I'm just wiping my hands of it, and he was negative about the whole thing and didn't want to look at it again for some strange reason. But
already it's shown, you've proven and shown incredible consistencies with the abduction scenario and narrative, which is enough to actually prick up the ears of someone like Gary Nolan, isn't it?
You'd think.
Yeah. Each to themselves, but I did contact Leslie Keane, and because I wanted to know if there is an association with UAP and Havana Syndrome. So basically what I did to start off with is I contacted Leslie Keane, and I just asked her whether she knew when the videos of the Nimitz, the Go Fast, and the other one, which I've forgotten, the gimbal videos, when they were actually leaked. And she said she knew about it in October 2017, but she contacted Chris Mellon for me and asked him, and he couldn't remember when he got his hands on the videos. But there was there was some. Well, he would have to go through his files apparently.
Oh, right. Okay.
But I've got a feeling that it either happened. So all of this, the developments would have most likely, if you can just interpolate or backwards, that something was going on with the leaking of these videos in late 2016, and that sort of like coincides with the first, patient zero.
Patient zero.
Yeah,
that's odd.
And if you go to that diagram that I've got, I think it's 24, where I've got a timeline.
Let's have a look. There it is.
That one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it there. So 2016, you got patient zero, December. It could be November, December.
December, 2016.
And so this is sort of like when the Pentagon videos were being leaked, and they were leaked in 2017. But I sort of like tried to put two and two together, and thought, well, is there a correlation between the release or disclosure of certain things and the emergence of Havana Syndrome, and it's sort of like almost lines up, but then I tried to find some more data and tried to find when we know that Grush went to Congress in, I think it was June 2023, and I tried to find out what the statistics were of Havana Syndrome there, and whether there was a bit of a hike up in numbers, because I was trying. My hypothesis is that is there a correlation between disclosure events and a hike in the number of Havana Syndrome cases, on the basis, which I'll tell you later on as to what my hypothesis is. But if you go to, let's go back to the cricket hypothesis and go to the distribution of the crickets in Cuba. That's
is this okay? This
number
okay?
12.
Here we go. Yeah. Right.
So basically, it's not this one. It's the one with the map of Cuba and Florida. Yeah, that one there.
Yeah.
So initially they were found in the Bahamas, I think, or Jamaica and Cuba. So these crickets were apparently distributed by Hurricane Irma up the coast of Florida, and some of the researchers were finding these short-tailed crickets further up the coast in Florida. So they were being dispersed by this hurricane. So I was thinking, well, maybe there could be a correlation between people hearing this sound a bit more dispersed through the United States, because these crickets are being distributed by the hurricane.
Yeah, but how many of those people are getting that syndrome, and how many of them work for intelligence?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's your problem,
I know, yeah. And so if you go back to that other one that you just showed me, so this is the what is this? Is this the distribution? What have I got here?
You've got distribution of Gryllus.
Yeah. So this is the distribution of I think this is the distribution of Havana Syndrome, isn't it? Or is it the actual cricket?
No, I think it's Gryllus asimilus. Is that the name of the
asimilus? It says.
That's the name of the cricket.
Okay, so
is that the cricket?
Must be.
Yeah, it could be. Well, that. Yeah, I think it is. I think it is.
Yeah.
So you can see that there's the distributions down now in South America,
because that's the Bahamas there, that area, isn't it?
Yes.
People actually see that on the screen.
In between North and South America.
Yeah.
Where the islands, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So
anyway.
so basically, is it the cricket sound, or is it something else? Is the cricket sound and Havana the sound that they hear in the Havana Syndrome the same, or is it different? So I looked at
is that this slide the sound forms?
Yes. Yeah. So the first one, the AP recording, is it's called AP because it's the Associated Press recording. So the Associated Press actually took a recording with their recording device when they heard this sound, and they were notified by, I don't know the full story, but they were notified by people that were hearing it. And if you can see the waveform there, and you can see a Silurinicus, the echo sound of that, they're almost the same. So, but they're slightly different, but almost the same. Yeah. And so if we go to the Jason Society video that I did on their actual publication in 2018.
Okay, no problem. Let's go to that. That looks really interesting.
Yeah, so I've got a video of me explaining that, because it's me flipping through it and going to a particular, I'm going to be talking about one particular sentence in the Jason organization had found when they looked at this study. So if you want to put that on and then just
No,
run
I'm
that
not sure
video.
if the sound's going to be that loud on
Okay.
this, so people might need to adjust their sets at home, but let's have a listen to this.
Now here we have the document that was a report that was actually created by the Jason Committee. As you can see here, it's declassified. A lot of it's actually redacted. You can see here, I'm just going to go down. A lot of it's redacted. And there's a couple of sentences here and there, even though it's declassified. And as you can see up the top here, it says secret revealed to United States of America and the Five Eyes, and it's law enforcement sensitive. So this is, the title is Acoustic Signals and Physiological Effects on U.S. Diplomats in Cuba. And it's the November 2018 report, which is the first report by the Jason Committee. There was another report done in 2021. If you go down to page 4, you can see here an interesting sentence, which it says here, it cannot be ruled out that the perceived sounds, while not harmful, are introduced by an adversary as deception. Deception's the magic word there, so as to mask an entirely unrelated mode of causing illness in diplomatic personnel. In that case, the medical data must be most carefully assessed. I thought that was a very interesting statement that was not redacted. It was almost as if somebody wanted it to be seen to resolve this issue.
So how do they expect you? How do they expect you to investigate this when they're not giving you all the information? I mean, you know.
No, there's a lot of
seriously.
redactions there, but that sentence is saying something to me. I just I had a bit of an epiphany because basically it's saying that the sound is mimicking the cricket sound. So whatever the actor is involved, they're mimicking this cricket sound to disguise their own sound, so that they can launch an attack, and then in a subversive way, so that they wouldn't be caught. And I thought that's really weird, and it's an ingenious way of actually initiating an attack, and a subvertive attack on the population, and then leaving everybody scratching their heads.
But the thing is too, is like these crickets just appeared out of nowhere? No. These crickets have always been around, right?
They've always been around, yeah.
Right. So if they would have been causing it, this would have been happening, this syndrome, whatever it is, would have appeared
exactly
from the beginning. Right.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's clearly not them, because out of the blue, out of nowhere, this starts happening.
Since when is the noise of a cricket? And we have cicadas here, which I think
a lot louder.
80% of their body is a balance. They're
Yeah.
just basically a living musical instrument.
Yeah.
And they are so loud. I don't know why we're not wandering around with vertigo perpetually. But what amazes me is that sentence is rather intriguing, but the deductions in that information speaks volumes.
Yeah.
They're actually onto something they're very perplexed about, and they're certainly threatened by in letting the public have too much information.
Yep. So it's difficult to do anything with this, because even other people, other scientists that tried to study this had found it difficult, because the CIA didn't actually give them access to the patients later on, because it was so hush-hush that they couldn't even get access to patient data or anything. So how do you do research on something that's so nebulous?
But obviously what they want to do is find people like yourself that will come up with some form of hypothesis, because they need to be thinking outside of the box. And it looks like they're actually putting the feelers out there to make sure they'll get individuals like yourself that will actually treat this in a very creative way and maybe find a solution to this that they would never come up with their reductionistic thinking. Just a hypothesis.
Well, so initially, obviously they thought it was Russia, and then they tried to find out what sort of weapon they might be using, whether it's microwave or ultrasonic pulsed electromagnetic radiation. But the United States did investigate every aspect of whether it could be a foreign adversary, and they came up with a blank. So they initially blamed Cuba. Cuba was actually trying to help them work out what the problem was. They eliminated Cuba initially, then they went on to Russia, and the Russians said they didn't know anything about it. And the problem with the Russians is that Trump was actually obviously a Russophile, and he was in power when this happened. So why would the Russians attack America when they love Trump? Obama wasn't there anymore. So the CIA, the FBI, and a few other agencies did an incredibly, like a massive study on an investigation on this, and they came up with a blank. So they said it is most likely, if you go to the next slide, which is the one where I've got, I wonder if I've included it. Yes, number 21 with the actual analysis of unlikelihood of it being a foreign adversary.
Okay, is that?
No, not that one.
No.
There should be a number 21 in that.
I'm not sure if I've put them in the numbers, actually.
Oh, okay.
What's this one? Just pop
Which
that
one?
up quickly.
NHI and Havana Syndrome?
So we'll just look at this one anyway. Havana Syndrome not caused by foreign adversary, U.S. intelligence says. So, I'm not sure whether you've got that one that I'm talking about, but it's similar to this publication in the sense that.
So is it a publication?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a publication. It's just basically a little diagram that they've done. Not that one. It'll come later. Yeah. So just saying that after extensive
Not the National
investigation,
Intelligence Council, is it?
Yeah, show me that one, and I'll.
Sorry about this, folks at home, but
That's it. That's the one.
Okay.
That's the one. Great.
National
Great.
Intelligence Council. So basically, they were saying it's very unlikely that it's a foreign adversary based on all the research that they've done. So if it's not a foreign adversary, if it's not the crickets, well, what's the alternative hypothesis? So
is it an internal threat?
Is it an internal? Well, why would the US be targeting its own individuals? That's the thing.
Well, don't get me started now. But isn't there someone else running all that stuff and not the government?
But anyway,
let's
let Roger follow this path. Let's not take him down another rabbit hole. But this is really fascinating.
What do you mean? Who's running? Anyway.
So basically, my hypothesis would be that it's definitely not internal. That was probably excluded initially, even before they looked at Cuba, but it's still ongoing. And so if it's not internal, if it's not a foreign adversary, if it's not a cricket sound, what the hell is it? And
because have they analysed the sound?
Of course they would have.
Yeah. So what have they come up with the sound? What have they?
Okay, so they know the frequency. They know that basically it matches the cricket sound.
Right, and it's trying to mimic that to make it sound like that. But
Yeah.
What is the sound that it's not the cricket sound? Have they been able to isolate that sound and say this is what this sound is?
Yeah, well, they've recorded. There's the Associated Press recording, and they have analysed it, but they can only, like, you can only work out what the frequency is, and they've tried to work out how you could generate that sort of frequency and intensity and whatever. And they came up with all these different theories about it being microwave or pulse.
So they don't know.
They don't know.
And
basically, so they don't know what the actual mechanism is that actually produces this sound.
Right.
And if it is a microwave, usually the microwaves are very bulky. They have got them down to a certain size now, but they can't be targeted. The microwaves, and you've got to be fairly close to the individual. So they've never found a device. They've never found a device that will not even remotely close to any of these victims. And some of the researchers are saying, oh no, we've got microwaves down to a certain, like you can carry them around and you can target people with them. Not quite sure whether that's
true or not.
That's true or not. But don't forget that these pulsed energy electromagnetic radiation has got to go through walls if it's the individuals in the house, and also it targets the individual. They can actually walk out of the sound and back into it if they want to, but it's somehow related to that individual. And why does one individual get affected and the other, somebody next to them may not even hear the sound? So it's something to do with, as I said before, the Frey effect, where basically they're hearing the sound in their head because, and it's somehow targeted to one specific individual, and that they have to know the anatomy of the skull and everything to make it work, which is you'd have to be. It's obviously something with a superior intelligence that can actually execute this. It's on a different level.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's on a level that we cannot even comprehend.
Sure.
So that's why I went on the bandwagon with the non-human intelligence. And so basically I thought, I can't eliminate that hypothesis. I cannot do it.
Not yet.
I can't eliminate it. Not yet.
Yeah.
I don't want to, but I'm not saying it's aliens, but I'm saying it's aliens, if you know what I mean.
I'm doing it, Georgie. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Wow, this is so fascinating.
Yeah.
So why is it aliens? Why do I think it's NHI? I think if we go to that video of Haim, what's his name? Haim Eshad.
Yes. Yeah. That's so fascinating.
He's going to make a statement there where he's going to be talking about a galactic federation. He's not the only one. So there's Joseph Hellier and also Gary McKinnon that was saying that there's a galactic federation, and they made a contract with the US government. They've been in cahoots with the US government.
Which US government is this? The shadowy one or the one we know?
Oh, the shadowy one, yeah. Of course.
Shadowy. It must be the shadowy one because...
Of course. Which other one is
this Galactic Federation...
Because when did that happen? Because it wasn't in the papers, that's for sure.
This Galactic Federation, Sue, goes right back to the 50s with Gene Roddenberry and Andrei Puharich.
The Nine.
And we've spoken about as the Nine, but this is an astounding statement from a highly cringed...
Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it. That's according to Israel's former space security chief. In an interview with an Israeli newspaper, he said the aliens have been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are. NBC News chief global correspondent Bill Neely explains this one.
Hi, Alison. Well, this is quite a story, and it comes from the man who headed Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years. Haim Eshad is making the extraordinary claim that the United States and Israel have been in contact with a group of aliens for years. Not immigrants, but extraterrestrials. He has called them the Galactic Federation of Aliens, and he says President Trump is aware of the existence of these aliens and had been on the verge of revealing their secrets, he claims, but was asked not to do so by the Federation in order to prevent what he calls mass hysteria. Well, the retired general says the US and Israel have kept it from the public because, quotes, humanity isn't ready and the aliens don't want to reveal themselves until humanity can evolve, he says, and understand what space really is. Well, the good news is that he claims an agreement has been reached between the US government and the aliens, a contract to do experiments here. There's also, he says, a secret underground base on Mars where there are American and alien representatives. Now, this former head of a branch of Israel's defense ministry is 87. He was very well respected, at least until now. And he said all this in an interview with an Israeli newspaper in Hebrew, but it's really taken off after parts of it were published in English by the Jerusalem Post today. He says he's come forward now in the hope that his news will be accepted as true. He notes that if he'd made these claims 5 years ago, he would have been hospitalized, but now he says, I've got nothing to lose. Well, so far, President Trump has not tweeted about this, though remember a year ago, he did set up the Space Force as the fifth branch of the US Armed Forces. Well, we did ask the White House, the Department of Defense and Israeli officials to comment. So far, they have not responded to the NBC News request, and I wonder if they ever will.
That's quite an extraordinary statement, and it echoes of Lieutenant Colonel Corso there. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
Yes. So basically, he was saying that Eshed had said that we're not quite ready to get to, for the public to get this information. But also, what wasn't mentioned in that video is that part of the agreement is that secrecy is an absolute must. So
right.
that's a very important statement that he's made, and the problem is with disclosure, the secrecy part is broken. So this may be a pushback by NIH. That's the punchline. So if you go back to my
that's quite a massive punchline, really, isn't it?
It is a massive punchline.
What pushback? My God.
You don't want to.
So where would you hit the? Sorry,
go on.
Where would you hit the U.S. government? That would be where they feel it the most is the intelligence community and the investigators.
Of course it would. Of course it would.
Yeah.
And see, this is something that would elude the public because of them not being part of that community, understanding those machinations. So what slide are we up to? I'm so sorry.
So we're up to that one that you just showed.
Okay, want to have a peek at that?
That one there, yeah. So basically, is it NIH that's actually causing the Associated Press recording of that video, that sound?
What's NHI stand for?
So non-human intelligence.
Roger?
So it was coined by David Grush. That's right. Non-human intelligence. So coined by David Grush, I think, during the congressional hearing. So we think we're calling it non-human intelligence rather than an extraterrestrial entity because they're apparently saying it's interdimensional, but I have a problem with that. But are they mimicking this cricket sound initially to have subverted the attention of their attempts to actually initiate their first attack on an individual? And then, is this pushback? Is this pushback for the leaking of those videos, which was one of the biggest things that happened in ufology in 2017? The Pentagon had to then later on acknowledge that yes, these were videos that they had and they're legitimate. But my research is stymied by the fact that it's almost impossible to sustain. Sustain this hypothesis based on the fact that it's there's still a lot of classified redacted documents, which we can't have. We don't have patient data. The patient data is a bit sketchy because we don't have baselines for these people to say what was normal for this person in terms of their, white matter volume. They did take blood samples of the initial patients, but Cyclone Irma put a stop to analysis of those because the cyclone came through and they either cut the electricity of the fridges or flooded or whatever, and they lost the samples. So they couldn't actually get biomarkers to examine whether there was anything, say, for example, in the blood in terms of a biomarker that could actually determine whether there was neurological damage. They were only basing it on these MRIs. So,
what you're stating is just a hypothesis.
It's just a hypothesis.
But it's an interesting hypothesis because, in a way, if you are to speculate that they are utilizing that cricket sound as a way of masking it, then we're looking at back to that sentence you spoke about deception there, and it sort of makes sense as to why those documents would be still so heavily classified and redacted.
Yep, exactly.
That they're actually aware behind the scenes they have people in the intelligence community that are being assaulted by this.
You hit the nail on the head. Yep.
Yeah.
There you go, Cats. You're onto it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's an incredible piece
so
of
why would they keep it classified and redacted if they know it's not a foreign adversary, if they know it's not internal, if they know it's not the cricket? Why? Why is this still classified?
Because it's a threat, and because maybe
maybe they have to be seen to be trying to do something about it.
Speculating here. Yeah. And also, I think that's why they put the feelers out there. That's why you're finding yourself in this medical task force all of a sudden colliding with this syndrome because they're aware that there is some link there to the world of the anomalous.
Has anybody else come up with that hypothesis as you have, or?
I don't think so.
Quickly patent it and copyright it to yourself now. Copyright it.
You can't do that, Monsanto.
Yeah. So basically, I've spoken to a couple of people. I've spoken to Ted Rowe, who's the CEO of the UAP Medical Association. He's sort of like, I think he shares the same feelings as I do, but other people within the UFO community dismiss it. I think I spoke to Leslie Keane, and she spoke to people in the know. So she's got a group of people who know a lot of who probably in the intelligence committee and whatnot, and they're saying it's not NHI, but because they were posed a question. So they're not necessarily researching it, but they were just, she just said, look, could it be, non-human intelligence that's causing Havana Syndrome? But if you look at that congressional hearing with Grush, there should be a video there with, don't know which one it is.
No, we've got that.
Yeah. Do you want to just show that? Because Havana Syndrome is actually mentioned by Tim Burchett in his questions to David Grush.
Let's go there now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Ogles, for the great questions, brother. Mr. Grush, I might have asked this before, but I want to make sure. Do you have any personal knowledge of someone who's possibly been injured working on legacy UAP reverse engineering?
Yes.
Okay. How were they injured? Is it something like a radioactive type situation or something we didn't understand? I've heard people talk about Havana Syndrome type incidences. What was your recollection of that?
I can't get into specifics, but you could imagine assessing an unknown unknown. There's a lot of potentialities you can't fully prepare for.
How do you think we ought to handle UAP whistleblower complaints like yours in the future?
Yeah, there was some issue with mine. So, PPD-19 process, it goes to the Intel committees, either through PPD-19 or ICD-120. There's not a good way for the Intelligence Community Inspector General to provide that to other committees. And I asked my information to be sent to the House and Senate Armed Services Committee because there are Title X equities at play, but there was no smooth process to do so. Yeah.
That's a trash can. Are you aware of any individuals that are participating in reverse engineering programs for non-terrestrial craft?
Personally, yes.
Do you know any that would be willing to testify if there were protections for them?
Certainly closed door and assurances that breaking their NDA, they're not going to get administratively punished for so. Yeah.
I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what he was saying is that Tim Burchett was posing a question to Grush saying, people that are working on their reverse engineering program, did they develop any neurological symptoms like Havana Syndrome? So he didn't actually say, is Havana Syndrome connected with non-human intelligence, but it was implied, and that's to me alluded to it, and that gave me the sense of that some people in Congress might actually have the same concept that I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're aware of it, and the numbers are increasing, and so they're probably a little scared and panicked, and that's why they're putting so many feelers out there. How fascinating.
Okay.
So I just want to conclude this with a couple of things.
Yeah.
So if we go to that image of the X-ray of the skull from Skinwalker Ranch.
Is that the Thomas Winterton?
Thomas Winterton, yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's do that.
Got it.
So Gary Nolan mentions Havana-like syndrome effects on Thomas Winterton from Skinwalker Ranch in an interview with Ross Coulthard in December 23. I thought that was really interesting because I still like, if you watch the series, Thomas Winterton was affected by something that actually caused him to have this little bump. See that bump on his skull? He was whether that's caused by edema or whatever. He had to be hospitalized. So Nolan was saying that it's Havana-like syndrome. So obviously they're thinking that when they were doing these experiments on Skinwalker Ranch, that basically this could be pushed back by non-human intelligence. So they're using some sort of invisible thing, electromagnetic radiation, to cause injury to somebody on that ranch. And now if we go to the last one, so it's the so there was an incident on Long Island, New York in August 2022, which I was investigating. So don't run the tape at the moment, but just bring it up.
It's a video, is it? Let's go.
Yeah, video.
So what happened here is that there were two investigators that were part of the Galileo project who were interested in UAPs, and they went down to Long Island to actually have a look at some, see whether they could spot some UAPs, and they spotted one, which was a triangular UAP over the ocean, but it can only be seen by infrared cameras, right?
Right.
So what they did is that they got their infrared beam and flashed the infrared image. Flashed the craft 5 or 6 times, and what the craft did is it got annoyed by this, and because it was being provoked, it sent an infrared beam through the water, and you can actually see it coming through the water, and it actually hit one of the researchers and paralyzed him hip down for about a minute, and then paralyzed his brother. So they're 2 brothers, and so they were temporarily paralyzed, and it went through the camera and tried to change the you can hear the clicking sound in the camera, trying to manipulate that camera to actually change the settings on it. So this is well documented, and there's a paper on this that we're working on. Actually, that's a scientific paper. There's 2 publications on this. And so if you run that video, you can actually see it's really grainy, but basically it's at night. It's at midnight, bit past midnight. So it's really grainy. And the reason why it's grainy is because there is jamming of the actual infrared by the UAP.
Right.
That is so complex and fascinating, and it alerts me to 2 major points there. One of them is the Bruce Maccabee's wife in the second film that David Paulides did, and the fact that her camera had the data changed inside of that when she was actually
I remember that.
Anomalous. Let's have a look at this data, and I'll discuss the other one after this.
Oh, yeah.
John's lighting them up. Let's see if they got their attention. Fascinating. These things are hovering just over the ocean. It's either 3 objects or 1. Yeah. I mean, they're very close to the surface. Let's see, I can walk a little further out there. All right, so I'm right at the beach edge here. And these objects are just hovering over the ocean, over the Atlantic Ocean south. Do we know what the azimuth is? I forgot my digital.
They are literally right above the waves. Because I'm reflecting out of the water.
Yeah.
See the water?
Yeah.
Do you guys see a light in the water?
I see it. Where's that come from, John?
Up closer. Right here. Go back up. Back up.
Go, go! You right?
I can't.
What?
I can't.
I don't see it, John.
Down there. I don't know if you guys saw that chevron pattern. I'm going to try to stop that frame. Yeah, it was a wave of light. There it is. Now this is infrared light. It was invisible to the eyes. Yeah, and this chevron pattern of light actually expanded. We have a tracker software that we can look at this frame by frame. There's about 3 frames in there, and you'll see this light grow very
That's it. Wow.
That is mesmerizing. And it also makes me wonder about the ubiquitous use of the image of the chevron throughout all space agencies in the world.
Yep. So did you see that thing going through the water, that little blue bar? So that's so that signifies to me that, and I interviewed these guys with Ted Rowe, that basically non-human intelligence can retaliate if it's being provoked. So basically, and it did actually. So I discussed this with, there were several people on the panel, several experts with PhDs in psychology and whatever. And one of the psychologists said he showed it to his friends, associates, and they said, "Oh, he could have collapsed because he, could have been a blood pressure thing, whatever." But that hypothesis was excluded by me, and on the basis that he did not lose consciousness during the event. He was completely conscious, but could not move his legs, could move his arms, and it was temporary and short. So it signifies to me that that infrared beam, or that beam that could be caught on infrared camera, entered his body and actually inactivated the nervous impulse from his motor neurons to his legs, or it could have involved some other mechanism, but just temporarily, immobilized him. And it's all caught on camera. Unfortunately, you can't see. It's very grainy. It's not a good video. But basically, that the two brothers, so the guy that was holding that camera had fallen down, and if you hear those little clicks, it's that infrared beam going into the camera and changing those settings in the camera and trying to work out what have they captured. What are they doing? So that signifies to me that NIH can do these things. And is it related to Havana Syndrome? Is that sound some electromagnetic radiation that can actually be used as on individuals as a retaliation for being provoked?
Yeah, you kind of got to be careful what you wish for, because when people go out there and they do the C5 things and flash stuff at it's like you don't
they
know
weren't
what
the
happen.
only people that were affected. So basically, I looked up the a database, another UFO database, and I think it was the one, I forgot the name of the database, but it's a well-known UFO organization that's been around for a very long time, run by Peter Davenport. And there have been instances where people have been walking in that similar area where they flashed a UAP with a torch, and it came over them and flashed back at them on the beach. They didn't paralyze them or anything, but they were provoking this other UAP, which was then interested in them and
And that notion of utilizing infrared too, I've found that consistently over decades, that infrared emulsion film, just your normal digital camera will look into the infrared spectrum much further than human vision. Our vision in the infrared spectrum is incredibly limited, but the set designer of 2001, the man that directed Brainstorm, Douglas Trumbull.
Donald? Was it Donald or Douglas?
Douglas Trumbull, was it?
Trumbull,
I'm getting it wrong there, but Mr. Trumbull, let's say that.
Let's say Mr. Trumbull.
He spent decades of his life before he passed away quite recently utilizing infrared in terms of the search for UAPs, UFOs, and had done extensive work and found some similar things occurred when they were tracking them with laser beams. So there's quite a bit of information even just up on YouTube about his research into that. And he got a lot of blowback from the film community when looking to produce a series of groundbreaking documentaries. He actually had to cloud them as fictional films and still got problems of getting that material into publication.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, so that is my hypothesis in a nutshell.
That's it. Yeah.
I think it's a worthy hypothesis. I think it's quite fascinating. I think you're really onto something.
Well,
there.
with the limited amount of information that you have to work with, because that's the problem, isn't it? You don't have it's another puzzle, and you've only got certain pieces of it. You
Well,
don't
the
know
intelligence
what
community
picture
has
is.
eliminated a lot of different, like foreign adversaries, something internal, whether it's, they've eliminated that it's actually the cricket. So who the hell is it? Who's the actor?
What is it? Exactly.
What is it?
Exactly.
What is it? So it's still a mystery. So how can a mystery be going on for that long with so many extremely bright people working on it? Not saying that, like I'm going to crack it, but I'm just saying that basically, once you eliminate all those hypotheses,
what's left?
What's left? And does it coincide with something? And is it possible? Can you not eliminate this at the moment? And so that's what I'm going to be presenting in Dallas. And I hope the plane doesn't crash when I go back home.
No, it won't. and you know what? No matter what you present, there's always going to be the yang and yin that comes towards you. And I think it just takes courage to stand by what you've already deduced. And I think it's a worthy hypothesis.
Sure.
I think it's a very fascinating hypothesis. And I think in many ways it shows consistency throughout these anomalous incidents.
Yeah.
And I get a feeling that Havana Syndrome may go way back before patient zero.
It could do. I don't know. I haven't researched it that far back.
Yeah.
Let's have there's the sound here that we've got an actual recording that was made.
Yeah.
So let's have a little listen to that.
Yeah, that was it.
This whole notion, I hope we haven't given themselves a bit of white cell matter damage then, but this whole notion of it utilizing something that mimics to create this sort of delusion is fascinating in a way too, because when you look at anomalous reports, and especially cryptids, and where we're coming from with Untold Radio, the Sasquatch, Bigfoot, the Yowie, it is perpetually mimicking other things to be deceptive.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Family members, sounds out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So there's something there. And it's interesting that radio signals always need a carrier wave. They need a strong signal underneath to actually carry the rest of that signal. And early literature on ghost research would actually speak about, there was the ghost of, was it 69 megacycles? Again, was speaking about the utilization of frequencies and the appearance of these things. So Havana Syndrome is probably a much more vast and complex notion than any of us will ever truly understand. But what an incredible mystery, and fantastic that you're basically in there with the rest of them coming to search for some conclusions on this, Roger.
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever be they won't disclose it, even if they know. I think they probably, if my hypothesis is true, they'll never. They're going to just make excuses that they can't work out what this is, and they'll never disclose, because it means that they're going to acknowledge that NIH exists.
Yeah, right.
Non-human intelligence exists. If they say no, it's not non-human intelligence, well then are you actually in that statement stating that you believe that non-human intelligence has come to this planet, and if it actually is, if they know it is, well then, and if and this is the whole thing behind UAP UFO transparency, is that perhaps non-human intelligence is got the shadow government by the balls, and basically they're saying, if you disclose anything more to the public, we'll just keep on doing this to your intelligence community and your ambassadorial staff.
I think you've got a very valid point there, which actually it goes back to the complete. I mean, you could actually bring the MIBs into the story there. Historically, you can look at consistencies with this. And the one thing that has always intrigued me about this phenomena, or this broad range of phenomena we call anomalous, that falls under the UAP umbrella, it seems to have a greater understanding of who we are than we actually have of ourselves.
Absolutely.
It seems to know us neurologically, physiologically, emotionally.
Look what it can do to us.
And then
we can't work it out.
Let me just throw a spanner in the works there. Could we really even call this alien? If it knows us that well, then what is this non-human intelligence really?
Where is it?
But it postulates just broadening your imagination and being astounded that we live in this world that is so much more complex and anomalous than we've ever been led to believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look, all we can do, there's some other bits and pieces here that we haven't screened. Shall I put that little piece of Condoleezza Harris on there?
Oh yeah. So these are just.
Sorry, I'm Camilla Harris. Yes, my apologies.
Condoleezza Harris. Why not? Why not?
I am tired. I'm losing it.
Anyway,
so before you do, basically these are two. I think it's 1 or 2 videos where it gives you an impression of what the what do you call them? So she's the vice president. So what the government their attitude towards Havana Syndrome is.
They've got a real
just
problem.
brushing it off.
You can see them evading it.
They're evading it.
And that's what's so fascinating. This actually gives a lot more credence to what your hypothesis.
Well, you can't be paying these people that much money, and they can't come back to you and say, "Well, we don't really know what's going on."
Especially
we
when
can't defend anybody. We can't just keep giving us defense budgets, keep upping them, but we can't really. We don't know what to do, how to deal with it, or where it's coming from.
Of the Associated Press.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Vice President. Before I get to my question, I think it's important to follow up on the Havana Syndrome incident that delayed your travel here. Do you have any sense of who was behind that? And considering that these incidents have happened all over the world over the past 5 years, what do you say to diplomats that are concerned for their safety? And is the U.S. doing anything to address that situation? And then I have a follow-up on Afghanistan.
Okay. On the issue of the health incidents, and we call them anomalous, as you've mentioned, health incidents, I will tell you that we're looking into it. And I'm not able to share much more at this time, but on your point about embassy staff, I met with them today and then also saw them yesterday during the lease signing ceremony. And I will tell you that the people who work in our embassies, be it here in Mission Vietnam or around the globe, are some of the most courageous and selfless public servants that you can meet. I talked with them extensively about the importance of their work and also a recognition of the sacrifice they make. For example, during the last year and a half around the COVID crisis, many of them sadly were unable to go home even when they lost family members to COVID. We talked about the significance of their work in doing the groundwork that we need to do around the globe with our partners and our allies of strengthening the relationships around people-to-people ties and relationships. And that is the work they do, and their safety and security is one of the highest priorities.
Do you feel she was avoiding the question there?
But we can't. Their health and security is of the highest priorities, but we can't sort that one out. That's basically what she was saying. She's saying 3 times she said that they were great, the sacrifices, amazing people. Exactly. It's like, we know that. We know that. We know that. But what are you going to do about this, Havana? Well, we can't do anything about it.
You
But
know,
we're
George,
just going to tell you that they're amazing people.
George
and
Orwell would
love
be
them.
rolling in his grave
Yeah,
because
the
it's
double
double
speak.
speak.
It's
It's
double.
so
She,
perplexing.
you could see she was
Absolutely.
choking on those words.
Yep.
You know, trying to get them out because she was just going around in circles, just repeating herself, and but was saying absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Yep.
Nothing new. Nothing new.
Absolutely.
I think you have actually nailed this thing.
I mean, that's
think-
really. I mean, I actually quite feel sorry for these people because they've been given they've been told we can't say anything to them because we don't know what to say to them, or we can't disclose this. So if they throw you a curly question, you've got to throw it straight back at them without really answering them, and they know they're not answering the question. They know it,
absolutely,
and that they're going around in circles, but it's like they've got no choice but
They've
to
been
do
trained
that.
to do
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Now, there's
Absolutely.
a couple of slides here which I'm just going to pop up and you can answer because I'm really curious about this one.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is the thing. So this is a device, a listening device that the Russians had given to the Americans. It's the Great Seal, and they hid it inside the seal. So and what they did is they drove a truck with it was a microwave, not a receiver. Receiver and transmitter. And so if you look at this device, there's no electronic parts to it. So the Russian embassy were spying on. Beg your pardon. The Russians were spying on staff within the U.S. embassy in Russia with this device. So it's not. So what I'm saying is that there is cause to actually be suspicious of Russia to a certain degree because they were putting these listening devices within the U.S. embassy to hear what was going on when they had no officials there.
Don't they X-ray every single thing that's given to them by anybody?
I have no idea.
Seriously, any gift that you
that
accept,
was very get smart.
It's like
then,
if you're
it?
if they were half Greek or a little bit Greek, they'd know that beware of anybody bearing any kind of gifts. especially the Russians. I mean, come on,
exactly.
and vice versa. The Russians should be very diligent in when receiving gifts from the Americans because every country spies on their allies. They spy on their allies, let alone their enemies. I mean, come on, that's their job.
But the unusual thing about this is that the Americans that were hit in different countries were, were there Russian spies in all these other countries, in particular Australia? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
That's assuming that it was the Russians, and
that's assuming that it was the Russians.
Hypothesized that it quite possibly wasn't the Russians.
Yeah,
but 2 weeks ago we had the director on Hayden Keaton that was showing us Russian spies in literally
but that was
Croydon,
in the 50s. Come on,
in the 50s,
not here now. Anyway, we're actually running it. Oh my God, we're running out of time.
And that has been so generous of you to give us this insight into this profound lecture that you're about to do in the US. And I feel for you because I know that our still technique and our video technique weren't that spot on tonight, Roger. So our apologies there.
No,
I did a good job.
And is there anything we've left out before we end? Is there anything we should get to?
There's one little thing left. So you should have an image of the New York Times building and the FBI. That's an interesting one. So you've got the two buildings here. So currently there is a court proceeding where the New York Times is actually suing the FBI for a FOIA request on Havana Syndrome, which is really interesting. So the FBI did this recent study on Havana Syndrome, and the report was sought by the New York Times, and the FBI has refused to show the New York Times that
Wow.
report. It went to court, so the New York Times took the FBI to court, and the judge has dismissed both the New York Times and the FBI's. Well, I'm not a lawyer, but basically, he's going to have a look at the report himself, and then
Right.
decide as to whether there's anything that the New York Times should not be seeing in that report
Right.
before they get access to that, or they get
So,
granted the FOIA.
right. So the New York Times are wanting that report on behalf of the people. Is that correct?
Well, they just want the report because they want to publish it and
Yeah, right.
get
On behalf, yeah,
paper
for the
sold.
people. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
for the
fair enough.
public.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's interesting that there's still so much secrecy behind this that
Yep.
why is why does the New York Times have to take the FBI to court? Because this is freedom of information,
Well,
and
it's-
yet they're it's interesting that this
Yeah.
thing has been going on for so long, and that there's this fight now in court between the FBI and the New York Times.
There you go.
I tell you, Roger, it's very Shakespearean.
Mm.
It takes me back centuries. He who doth protest
Exactly.
has always got something to hide,
Mm.
you
Exactly.
know?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is really got a strong connection to the anomalous world, and maybe some
Anomalous.
way. Did we just lose ourselves then? Did something?
I think you
drop
just
out?
lost yourselves. I'm the only one on at the moment.
Okay.